I heard something on the news today that actually kind of made me pretty angry. They decided to not include the flag being raised at the first steps on the moon by Neil Armstrong. Now, that, as far as I'm concerned, is a non-issue. It isn't a movie about Americans going to the moon. It's a movie about Neil Armstrong. What upset me was what Ryan Gosling had to say about it.
I think that this was widely regarded in the end as a human achievement.
You see, maybe before you decided to take this role and do this movie, you should have done a little history. There really isn't a span of time that you can reach out far enough to where you can't make anything pretty much meaningless. But back in the 60s, the Russians were very much against us. They really didn't like us very much. They wanted to destroy us. One of their ways that they wanted to do that was by launching missiles at us from space. So I think Kennedy summed it up most eloquently in his speech in '62, where he declared that we were going to be going to the moon.
For the eyes of the world now look into space, to the moon and to the planets beyond. And we have vowed that we shall not see it governed by a hostile flag of conquest, but by a banner of freedom and peace. We have vowed that we shall not see space filled with weapons of mass destruction, but with instruments of knowledge and understanding. Yet the vows of this nation can only be fulfilled if we in this nation are first, and therefore we intend to be first. In short, our leadership in science and industry, our hopes for peace and security, our obligations to ourselves as well as others, all require us to make this effort, to solve these mysteries, to solve them for the good of all men, and to become the world's leading spacefaring nation. We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won, and they must be won and used for the progress of all people. For space science, like nuclear science and all technology, has no conscience of its own. Whether it will become a force for good or ill depends on man. And only if the United States occupies a position of preeminence can we help decide whether this new ocean will be a sea of peace or a new terrifying theater of war. I do not say that we should or will go unprotected against the hostile misuse of space any more than we go unprotected against the hostile use of land or sea. But I do say that space can be explored and mastered without feeding the fires of war, without repeating the mistakes that man has made in extending his writ around this globe of ours. There is no strife, no prejudice, no national conflict in outer space as yet. Its hazards are hostile to us all. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind, and its opportunity for peaceful cooperation may never come again.
See, in the end, sure, it's a human achievement. But if you wanted to talk about the end, maybe you should have done a movie about SpaceX or one of the more recent launches. But you decided to do a period piece. And perhaps you should have learned something about that period. The second thing that Ryan said that really angered me was this.
I don't think that Neil viewed himself as an American hero. I never got that impression.
See, Neil didn't really go around saying he was an American hero because he had a thing called humility. It's amazing how people who go around and call themselves American heroes aren't really regarded as such. It's the people who do things like this.
An experienced naval aviator and the youngest pilot in his squadron, he flew 78 combat missions during the Korean War and returned home a decorated veteran.
That sort of thing is what makes you an American hero. It's the way that Americans view you. You really don't have much say in it. And if you decide to take it upon yourself to call yourself such, nobody else is going to see you that way. It's infuriating when people decide that they're just going to be blatantly ignorant to things. But of course, Ryan Gosling's Canadian, so I wouldn't really expect him to get it. The only thing, in the end, that Canada seems to stand for is virtue signaling. But if you can't have respect for the man that you're trying to portray, at least have respect for the way that we all view him. I've always thought of Neil Armstrong as an American hero. I can't think of many people who haven't. And the fact that you don't, after portraying him in a movie, and yet clearly not learning anything about him, our country, or the way we think, frankly, it sickens me.